All right, big man. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. It is Tuesday. It's May 17th. We are here. It's Chief. It's me. Chief, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Doing well. We are actually going to do a little bit of a pivot today because usually we just do a random topic and whatnot. We're going to do a doc review on today.
On today.
How about that? Well, not on today.
Well,
today instead of rather Wednesday or Thursday.
Right.
Crazy.
We're traveling. We're going to we're in New York right now when you're listening to this. We're doing the dozen. We're getting ahead of things. So.
Yeah, and this one, like, as of right now, we're recording on a Friday. I saw it was number one yesterday, but I still feel like the blow up is going to happen sooner. Like, would you agree? Like when you're like, oh, everyone's talking about it, it's not gonna. Well, I could be wrong.
It hasn't really. I remember
it hasn't popped off yet.
It hasn't. It was when I watched it this morning. It was the number one trending doc. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of buzz on social media about it. Well, let's change that because this is fucking preposterous.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's an insane story.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Our Father. It's about a story that took place in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
An infertility clinic.
Over the course of, I think the earliest one they said was 1979. And then all the way up in, I think, through the 90s at least. Maybe longer than that. Oh, no, it was even longer than that.
Was it?
Yes, and we'll get to that. But it was like into the 2000s.
Yeah, so the gist of it is obviously infertility clinic, and the doctor was being a real scumbag. And we'll get into it.
To say the least.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Before we do, though, I do want to talk about Miller Lite, Chief.
I love Miller Lite.
It's, like you said, when people are listening now, we will be in New York. You always have a couple beers when you go visit the office and people are trying to go out and whatnot. And I always enjoy bringing the Miller Lite to them, because they're always these, opposite beer that we're not going to mention, but, I don't care. But I like being the guys like, no, you guys are weird. You guys should drink Miller Lite.
It's a staple. It's an absolute staple, the absolute best. That great tasting, less filling, that white can, it's crisp. And now it's hot in this city. And when it's hot, there's nothing I like drinking better than Miller Lite.
Yep. Yeah, I just love making fun of them about how they don't drink it. So to get Miller Lite delivered right to your door.
What a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, morons.
Like, it's so much better.
It really is.
Yeah.
Ad aside, it truthfully is.
Yep.
To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/redline, where you can find it pretty much anywhere that they sell beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Okay, Chief. Where do you even start this one, man? Because it is absurd.
Yeah, it is. And it's, you basically, the first thing that came to my mind when I was watching it was that, what was the documentary about the California killer, the Nightcrawler guy?
Yeah, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Yeah, which he got busted basically through 23andMe, right? And that's what happened to this guy too. So this modern...
No, did he? I don't know.
Yeah, I thought he did. That there was like a DNA sample.
No, you're okay. Sorry, you're thinking of the Night Stalker. I'm talking about the original Night Stalker, the Golden State Killer.
Yes,
Joseph D'Angelo. Yes, he got caught through 23andMe.
Right.
Correct.
So
yes, sorry.
So that's where my brain went initially, where it's like there's probably all these people out, like these disgusting people out in the world who have committed these heinous crimes
that are sweating because of this.
Now that this technology is out there, like. We're in trouble.
Yeah.
And that's how this guy eventually got caught. Is this woman who, it's like you feel bad for all these people, but she's probably what, like in her 30s, I think, when she started going through this, maybe late 30s, early 40s. And they described her, and they interviewed a bunch of different people for this. I'd say there's maybe as many as 8 that were kind of featured more prominently, that were siblings. So they called her, like, as if it was patient 0, sibling 0. And so she was just curious. She's like, Mom, like, you can tell me, am I adopted? Am I this? Am I that? Like, I don't look like anybody in this family. I got, everyone's dark features.
It's like a weird intuition.
Yeah.
That, she wasn't her parents' biological kid.
And they swore that she was. And then she ran the DNA test and she wasn't. So that set her on this path to, like, kind of get to the bottom of the truth. And when she put in her DNA, it was like, you have 8 different, like, close relatives that were siblings. And when she first, like, thought of it, she's like, something has to be wrong here. And then, but it wasn't. So she just kept going, like, kept digging and connecting with these people. And then eventually found out that the common ancestor, they found it was something like Swinford or something like that, and it's like, hey, like, do you have anybody, they connected with this like distant relative, do you have anybody with the last name Klein, which is the doctor's name, in your family tree? And she goes, and she, this woman had replied to a couple different emails, she listed all these names. What about Klein? Do you have a Klein? Oh yeah, like I do have a Klein, like that's my cousin, he's a doctor. And it was just like, oh God.
Mm-hmm.
So then they, continually do this investigation, and they confront him, and they have this meeting at like, sounds like a diner. There was like 6 or 7 of these like siblings, his offspring, that like connected it, and he showed up with like his own biological kids that he raised, and they confronted him. He's like, hey, like this is what I did, but there's no more than 10 siblings. And there is, it's not law, but it's like standard practice that no single sperm donor is supposed to give more than 3 in a geographical area, because you don't want a situation where you have all these people who have an unknown father, and they get together, they end up dating each other, even though they're siblings, but they were raised by 2 different parents, they would never know. And that was like one of the fears of this. And then it was like, yeah, all these people are related. And then they just kept digging, and they connect with more people and more people and more people. And I think the final count that I saw was 68 was the last woman they,
I thought it was 96.
Might've been 96.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I remember seeing the last person, like that was featured prominently, which was the most horrifying.
Yeah, the ending
one.
card, the ending graphics said 96 as of this point, because listen, if
Well,
you're in the Indianapolis area right now, I mean, you got to go get this test, I feel.
You have to.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing where she was like, they were going through it, and it's like, well, we didn't reach out to anybody who was under the age of 18. So he was doing, that's what, like I was saying, like when did he stop? Well, if they have people still under the age of 18, he must have been doing it until at least 2006.
Crazy.
Okay. And he's like an older guy now. He walks with a cane, and
Looks like the guy from Jurassic Park, kind of.
yeah, that's exactly what he looks like.
Yeah.
He's like a heavier version of that guy, I would say, a little bit like taller, but yes, like that face, that beard, like that is bang on. That's bang on. Another guy who's interested in like weird forms of conception. So dinosaurs out of mosquitoes' eggs, and then
this guy.
So then it was like, I was thinking to myself about this, because the first is like, he's this doctor, and he talked to some of their former partners and some of these other former people, and it was, this guy's been a good guy. He's a religious person. He's a philanthropist. He's helped so many people, and then it's like, but he also has this secret. So they talked about like the first woman they interviewed, it was like, her husband could not produce sperm, so they're going to use a donor, and so he just used his own. And I'm like, that's fucked up. But it's like, if you're just using a sperm donor, in my head I'm like trying to like work through this, I'm like, that is, like, it's shitty and gross, but at the same time it's like, if it's a random person, it's a random person. That's what I'm like, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's kind of where my head was. So that was like the first level. Then they interviewed another woman.
Yeah, I mean, it's wrong.
It's wrong.
Just be clear,
It is wrong. Yeah. It is wrong. But there are like degrees. Like,
but then the husband ones were like...
Yeah, so then there were ones where it was like they didn't have any of those issues necessarily, any of these, like they had viable samples, and he would just, they would show up with their viable sample, he'd be like, all right, I'll be right back in, and he would go into like another room, jerk off, and put his sample into these women, and like use his sample to get them pregnant. And it's like, holy fucking shit. And did this habitually. Like, it seems like it was almost like his entire practice was just like him using his sperm to get these women pregnant. And there's definitely like gross, all these different sorts of things, ethical things too, but then also standard practice, right? Because if they, and I didn't know this, have you ever donated sperm, Ed?
No.
Been desperate in college, try to...
Why, did you?
No.
No, I never
I've done plasma before.
I thought I don't think I meet the height requirement. Don't you have to be like a fucking...
Well, that's what I was going to say. There are all these requirements where it's like you can't have any autoimmune diseases. You can't have really anything. Like anything that they would know about, they would just like, you can't have a history of heart disease in your family, cancer. Like the other fertility doctor said that they eliminate like 30-35% of people right away, just based upon like they answer a survey and it's like, yeah, like
sorry, it's not gonna work.
Your sperm sucks.
Yeah.
So that was part of the deal with this guy, and so he would know that as a fertility clinic guy that he is not a candidate, and it just didn't stop him. So then he was doing that, and then the part to me where it was like it got to a level where I'm like, I want to puke.
What was the last woman?
Sibling 68.
Yeah, that was tough because I thought it was going somewhere else. I thought it was going to say like that's how she had her kids too, which I was like, you can't do that. Obviously, there would be direct.
That would be incest.
Yeah, and there would be direct, possibly abnormal. I don't know. Like I don't know if that's the right word. Excuse me.
Yeah,
if it's
well,
not.
like some
defects.
Like, birth defects.
Yeah, birth defects
at least a high risk of that.
Yeah.
So they didn't talk about her children really at all.
No, and that's where I thought it was going. But even though it's still horrific and still bad,
but it very well could. Like, and she just didn't want to talk about it because she was very emotional about it. But basically, this guy is his biological daughter, and he, over the course of 3 years, she used him as her fertility doctor too.
Yeah.
So it's her dad, and he's like feeling her up. And
it's her gyno. Mm-hmm.
As her gyno, pap smears, like the whole fucking gambit of things that you would do to a woman in that position. But it's like, it's your fucking daughter. He probably knew, or definitely knew, because there was a picture of him holding her because her mom was so thankful that he had this daughter. He knew and just was like, I don't fucking care.
And no remorse, no fucking
no empathy.
And they were friends with the biological mother and what should have been her biological father.
Right.
So
awful.
Yeah, really, really bad. You're right.
Yeah.
There was like it's all horrible. I agree, but then the layers to it, where this scumbag like never stopped, was crazy. It was
awful.
Yeah, it really was. And he was just such an odd guy. And there was other twists and turns that were weird too, like
how he didn't really commit it. Like none of this is against the law. Like that.
That's absurd.
Blew my fucking mind.
I mean, this is it's rape.
Do you remember the lawyer?
Yes.
Okay, so you think it's rape? I don't know that it fits.
If you're putting your semen into someone, I don't know.
But
dude.
they're asking you to put semen in them, but they don't know it's yours. So I don't know that it would meet the definition of
whatever it is.
It's fucked up.
There is some legal thing.
It's got to be fraud at minimum.
Yes,
but they couldn't charge him for that. So basically, this guy...
The battery point made sense, too.
That made more sense because that would be like an unwanted touch.
Yes.
Is like the definition of a battery. And that would be clearly an unwanted touch. But they said that wasn't a strong enough case either. So basically, like, he filed these documents where he almost kind of like sounded like he committed perjury. And they tried to get him on that. And then he knew the prosecutor. The prosecutor submitted... or another county's prosecutor submitted like an open letter to the judge, and the judge slapped him with a $500 fine, and that was it.
Yeah.
So it's just like there is just no recourse. Like this guy, $500 fine. This is a question I have for you, and you kind of made a reference to it. Would you want to know? I think it's one of those ignorance is bliss situations.
I think you have to know, man, with all the health things and shit like that.
I know,
like
but
it's a good question.
Imagine being the father who raised those children that weren't his forever.
I'll admit that it's I don't know, man. I guess it's different if you were
like you dedicated your life to raising those children and they weren't yours.
Yeah.
Like I kind of think, and then it's like your relationship probably is with your children is probably never exactly the same. I'm sure, like these elderly, there are people are now like in their 70s. Most of the women they interviewed were grown. So
yeah, and she said like I have to ruin someone's life every time there's a new match.
Yeah. Like I would feel a degree of immense guilt where it's like.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. Obviously,
it's tough though.
Yeah, it's just. So you're you're a blue pill guy, red pill guy?
I am.
What's the difference?
Typically a red. If you're using the Matrix, so that means like you're woke.
You like to know.
You like to know. That's like in general. I want to know. I don't know if it's worth. Like you have a father. That father raised you.
Yeah.
You have a dad. he's your father. You have a dad. And now, like, you know, all the things, thinking, oh, this is my baby girl, this is my baby boy, and I'm taking him to this XYZ event, helping them through like emotional events, graduations, and then you find out like all the emotions, all the dollars, all the everything, and it wasn't even your kid. This guy stole that from you.
Yeah, I think it's worse for the fathers almost.
I think so
almost.
too.
I mean, it's horrible for both, obviously, but it's so bad for the fathers.
Because on some level, for the women, even though it's disgusting, they still, and one of the women said as much, where it's like, I have a hard time reconciling this. And she's like tearful because she's like, I have these twin girls and they are perfect. And I love them, you know, immensely. But this is wrong and it makes me feel gross. But I love them because they still carried them to term, gave birth to them, raised them, and it was their egg and they loved those children. Yeah. So, and I'm sure that the fathers, even though they got fucking defrauded out of their lineage and money and time and, you know, everything, they still love those kids too. I'm sure, but there just has to be something like, what the fuck? Yeah. You know,
it's a horrible situation. Like you got to feel horrible for all those people, and especially just knowing how it's going to keep increasing and increasing. And throughout the documentary, if you haven't watched it yet, it just keeps going. No more than 10. All right, there's no more than this number. And
15 would be the max.
Yeah, and it just keeps going and going. So this guy was literally just such a piece of shit that he was just jacking off into a cup and he was just using his. And then there was a religious element to it here where people were saying that it was because he was, what was the exact religion called? It was like a cult-like religion where like they believed in like preserving the white race or something like that.
Well, that's like one of the, so he is the daughter, one of like the sibling zero that I referenced earlier. She said like, well, like he has some like perverse ideology where he like basically wanted to make all these Aryan babies with blonde hair, blue eyes, and that's really what he did. Like they were all like, the vast majority of the ones that they showed at least were blonde hair, blue eyed babies. And so they do think that maybe there was like a racial undertone to him wanting to like, so beyond being just your normal run of the mill, egotistical, disgusting psychopath, also a racist.
Yeah.
So it's just tough. I think if you like, I think the first thing I would do if I found that out, I'm moving to Seattle. I'm getting the fuck out of Indianapolis, because it's like you can't run. Like, and a lot of them have children now. You know, a lot of these babies that were born in the 80s, now they have children. They're going to school. They're going to T-ball. They're doing, and it's like, one of the women said, I had to have a conversation with my daughter. She's getting to the age where she's going to date. She's like, you have to be really careful. And like, imagine that conversation. Like,
imagine having to walk around and be like, man, that person kind of looks like me.
Yeah.
And that could be a match. That's brutal too.
Yeah. Or then it's like, you know, you're thinking back to like, you know, everyone's got a laundry list of hookups in their life. And it's like, there's a good chance that I hooked up with my sibling. Like, that's like, we went to the same high school. We went to the same, you know, like you could vomit.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't, you know, they're raised in different households. They wouldn't know. And
Quiverful was the name of the Christian religious movement.
Okay.
And Our Father. It was some wild clips they were pulling from it. And, the guy, too, was very uneasy. Like, the gun stuff was fucking weird.
I forgot about that for a second, but yeah.
Yeah, like when he was like, oh, I'm coming we'll meet you at the restaurant. But like I would have thought the same thing if I was that reporter from Fox. Like,
yeah, so they documented at least 3 different instances where, so they had the first initial meeting I talked about where they walked into the diner with like 6 or 8 of the siblings and he had a gun on him then. It's like, that's what the fuck. Mm-hmm. And then the reporter, same thing. And then when they finally did have enough to actually bring him to trial, which he pled guilty to, basically it was like a perjury thing. Like he said, like
obstruction of justice. Was it maybe?
Because he didn't give lawful, accurate statements about the case. Mm-hmm. So they had him on that, and people were hoping he would do jail time, and the judge was just like, yeah, no. But he, like, when the DA and the sheriff showed up to his house to take a DNA sample, which they had a warrant for, he had a gun on his belt then too. So it's just like, what are you doing? You're gonna get into a shootout with the district attorney and the sheriff about your DNA, like, or the reporter? You're gonna murder this reporter? Like, are you trying to is it like an intimidation thing?
Regardless of anything, this dude should be in jail.
Yes,
he is like the lowest of the fucking low, and it's a horrible story.
It really is.
It's a horrible story.
Awful. Absolutely.
And then they
awful.
chalked it up like, oh yeah, he killed a little girl when she was 4, and he found religion. And it's like, what, dude? Like everything, he turns into a fucking.
But like
serial,
that happened in like the 60s or 70s.
Yeah,
you know, like
turned into a serial fucking pervert. Is that the way to put it? Like, was this a fetish? I don't know what the fuck it was.
I don't know. Like it's like you're an egotistical maniac. To the point that it's like, I'm going to spread my seed all over Indianapolis.
Yeah.
You know? And that thing, it's not like there is someone said, like, one of the women's like, it is, because someone was like, it's not a sexual act. And the woman's like, yeah, it is, because he saw you laid on the chair and your feet in the stirrups, legs spread, and he goes, I'll be right back, jerks off, and then puts it in you. Like, if that's not a sexual act, then I don't know what is.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's legally defined as rape, but it's directionally rape.
Even if it's not, there's something that should be a law that you can't fucking do that.
Yeah.
If you do, you go to jail for a long time.
Yeah, and one of the ending credits was that those children did lobby and got a law passed so to prevent stuff like this from happening in Indiana, but there is no federal law. Which makes me think that maybe this is like a more common thing than we...
Well, that's what the card said. It said, thanks to at-home DNA testing, 44 additional doctors have been found to have used their own sperm to inseminate fertility patients.
Fucked up. Yeah. I see. I missed that one too. I might have turned it off early.
I think you did.
Yeah.
Because, it said Klein is currently the most prolific, and as of this production, there are currently 94 Klein siblings and counting.
I mean, it's got to be over 100. What's the record for most children ever?
I have no idea.
I think it's a Saudi. I'm pulling it up right now. So a woman gave birth to a total of 69 children between the year 1725 and 1765. 27 total births. So she just had a gazillion triplets and things like that. That's fucking wild. I'm pulling this article up from.
So you're saying he might be the most, probably?
He might be. Well,
I mean, that's just, we'll see what happens now.
Well, Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. He's got thousands. There's like a stat about him that, and he and his son, that it's something like he raped and like pillaged like all the way across Asia to the point that it's like, I want to say it's like 1 in 7 Asians alive today can trace their heritage back to him. But then there's Ismail Ibn Sharif, had 888 children. 800. He was a Moroccan sultan.
Wow.
So it's a lot.
Yeah, we'll see, man. Because if you, like I said, if you went to especially his clinic, but really any infertility clinic in Indianapolis, you should get this 23andMe. Unless if you don't want to know,
how
like
do
you said. But
and it's like, unless...
I feel like you do got to know, like you said, about, preserving... I don't know.
I think you got to do it like as soon as a child's born. Like if you're going through this now, you got to do DNA testing like immediately to make sure that you're the father. And
also, like, thankfully, like, it's more advanced now, although you still can't confirm that this wouldn't happen, right? If the doctor... I would hope there's more boundaries in place now but now, like they said, you go on a website now and you get pictures of these guys and you click these profiles. Back then it was like,
who knows?
Yeah,
flip through a book or something.
Magazine,
I don't know.
I think it was. I remember what one of our old coworkers told us how she went through it, and it was super complex. It was very interesting.
Oh, really? I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. It's a lot different.
Very.
But all right then. I think that's it, unless you have anything else.
I don't.
Disturbing doc.
Gross.
Fucking scumbag, and feel sorry for the for the children
Yeah.
and the families.
It also
affected.
makes you realize how fortunate, like I don't have children, neither do you, but how fortunate people are that don't have issues conceiving.
Yeah.
And so many people do.
I know. It's very sad.
Yeah.
It's very sad. Okay. That's it, Chief. That's it for today, everybody. We will see you all tomorrow.